The gold of my wedding sari glittered under the mandap lights, but I felt like I was drowning. Silk clung to my skin, heavy and hot. The weight of the jewelry made my neck ache. I could hear the rhythmic beat of the doll outside, guests chattering, children running around. To everyone else, this was a celebration. To me, it felt like an execution. I tried to focus on the priests chanting familiar words I'd heard all my life at festivals, in temple halls, during family ceremonies, but today they sounded different. Today they sounded like a curse. The crowd of 300 relatives and business acquaintances watched from their flower-draped chairs, phones out, smiles fixed, judging every breath I took. I could feel their collective gaze pressing on me. I forced myself to keep my face neutral, calm, pretty, perfect, just what they wanted. Move your veil slightly, Beta, my mother murmured as she reached over to adjust the edge of my dupatta. Her perfume, rosewater, and jasmine made me dizzy. She smiled for the cameras, lips curved in a mask I'd seen my entire life. Then she leaned closer, lips almost brushing my ear. "You're our sacrifice," she whispered. The words sliced through me like glass. For a moment, I couldn't breathe. Surely, I'd misheard. The drums were loud, the Sanskrit mantras louder, but her eyes told me I hadn't misheard at all. Cold, calculating, triumphant. Before I could react, my father stepped forward, pretending to straighten my necklace. "Do your duty, Mira," he muttered, voice low and sharp. "Don't shame us." Sacrifice, duty, shame. Words I'd grown up with, words carved into my spine since childhood, but never had they been spoken so plainly, so openly cruel. I glanced across the mandap at Arjun Malhotra, my soon-to-be husband, tall, poised, wearing an expression as polished as the cufflinks on his sherwani. He looked like the kind of man who never broke a sweat. I wondered if he'd heard what my parents just said. Probably not. He looked bored, maybe annoyed. The priest's voice rose, asking for our consent. Arjun said, "I do," steady, deep, with no hesitation. A perfect son for a perfect alliance. Then all eyes turned to me. Under my veil, my mother's nails dug into my arm. A silent command, "Say it now." I opened my mouth and almost laughed. Laughed because I wasn't trembling like they expected. Laughed because they had no idea what I'd planned. Laughed because for once in my life, I wasn't their obedient puppet. I smiled, bright, serene, dazzling for the guests, even as my heart thundered, not with fear, with exhilaration. They thought they'd sold me. They thought they'd won. But they didn't know the truth. This marriage was not going to end the way they thought. Because today was the day. I burned their script. I said the words clearly. "I do." The guests sighed in collective approval. My parents exhaled as if they'd just secured their legacy. And in that moment, I swore to myself, before this day was over, they'd learn exactly how wrong they were. The rest of the ceremony passed in a blur. Holy fire, flower garlands, the 7 sacred steps. I moved through it all mechanically, like an actress playing a part I'd rehearsed my whole life. My mother kept smiling at the cameras. My father kept nodding at the Malhotra elders, pretending everything was perfect. When the priest declared us husband and wife, the guests cheered. Someone tossed petals into the air, and through it all, my mother's whisper echoed in my head. "You're our sacrifice." After the final blessings, Arjun leaned toward me, voice low enough that only I could hear. "You're very calm for someone whose life just got sold." I turned to look at him, surprised. His expression was unreadable, but there was something in his eyes, curiosity, maybe even respect. "You have no idea," I murmured back. The reception line was endless. Every auntie pinched my cheek or adjusted my jewelry. Every uncle gave a lecture on marital duty. The Malhotra's friends asked about honeymoon plans I didn't have. I smiled and nodded and let them think I was grateful. Inside, I was on fire. Not anger, not yet. Something sharper, something dangerous. My mother slipped beside me when no one was watching. "Good girl," she whispered. "This will save us all." "Save us?" I asked softly, still smiling for the cameras. "Or save you." Her eyes narrowed. "Watch your tongue." Then she glided away before anyone noticed. Later, during a brief moment alone, I caught my reflection in a hallway mirror, jeweled, painted, perfect, a stranger. I remembered being 12, sitting on the staircase, overhearing my parents talk about marrying me off to some business partner's son. "It's not about love," my father had said. "It's about alliances." "She's quiet," She won't fight us, my mother had replied. They'd been wrong about that for years, but I'd let them believe it. Because what they didn't know was that I'd been planning my escape since I was 15. End today. On the very day they thought they'd crushed me, my plan would finally come alive. The night ended with endless photographs and blessings. My cheeks hurt from smiling. By the time Arjun and I were ushered into the decorated car for our bid, I could barely feel my legs. My mother hugged me tightly before I left, her lips brushing my ear one last time. Don't forget who you belong to. I smiled sweetly and whispered back, I won't. But inside I added, I belong to no one. Not anymore. As the car pulled away, Arjun glanced at me sideways. You're not crying, he said. Most brides cried during this goodbye. Should I be? I asked. He shrugged. Depends. Do you like your parents? I laughed, a short, sharp sound that startled even me. Like them. That's funny. Arjun looked at me longer than was polite. You're not what I expected. Good, I said. Neither are you. That night, when the celebrations finally ended and the last guests left, I stood on the balcony of the Malhotra estate, still dressed in wedding silk, staring out at the city lights. I thought about my mother's whisper. I thought about the documents locked in my suitcase, the lawyer waiting for my call, the years of planning I'd done in secret. They thought they'd trapped me. They had no idea I'd been building the key all along. I whispered into the night, to no one but myself. Let's see who gets sacrificed now. I woke on my first morning as Mrs. Arjun Malhotra, to the sound of birds outside an unfamiliar window. The bed was enormous, the silk sheets cool against my skin, and the air smelled faintly of roses and sandalwood, expensive, suffocating. For a moment, I forgot where I was. Then the memories of yesterday came rushing back. The mandap, the vows, my mother's hissed words, "You're our sacrifice, Arjun," was already gone. Not surprising. We hadn't spoken much last night. Barely at all, really. After a long day of ceremonies, we'd sat in awkward silence, two strangers bound together by our parents' ambition. He hadn't tried to touch me, and I hadn't minded. I padded across the room, still in my wedding bangles, still feeling the weight of 1,000 eyes that had watched me yesterday. On the table near the door, I saw an envelope. My heart clenched. It wasn't from Arjun. The handwriting was unmistakable. My mother's graceful, looping script, "Do as you're told, or your brother suffers." That was all it said. No signature, no explanation, just a threat, as casual and familiar as a bedtime lullaby. I folded the note carefully, slid it into my drawer, and sat on the edge of the bed until the room stopped spinning. This was my wedding gift from my parents, a reminder that even now, even married into one of the wealthiest families in the city, I wasn't free. But they didn't know how long. I'd been preparing for this. The first time I realized I didn't belong to myself, I was 7. I'd spent weeks practicing for the school play, memorizing every line, even staying late to rehearse with friends. I was so proud. But the morning of the performance, my father announced we had to attend a business lunch with one of his important contacts. I begged to stay at school just long enough for the play. "Stop crying," he snapped. "You're coming with us. Don't embarrass me in front of Mr. Kapoor." My mother chimed in with her usual softness that wasn't soft at all. "Mira, beta, you're a good girl. Good girls do what their parents say." I remember sitting in that restaurant, staring at my untouched plate, imagining my classmates performing without me. That was the first time I understood that in our house, my wants didn't matter. Only theirs did. By 12, I'd noticed the difference in how they treated me versus my brother, Rishi. When Rishi wanted to join cricket camp, my parents signed him up immediately, bragging to relatives about his talent. When I asked to join a debate competition, my father said, "Why? Girls don't need to argue. You'll just get married anyway." I overheard them talking one evening while I sat hidden on the staircase. "She's quiet," my mother said. "Easy to manage. She won't fight us." "Good," my father replied. "She'll be useful one day. We just have to place her well." Place her well. Like I was a vase, or worse, a chess piece. I learned to stop asking for things. I smiled when they canceled my plans, nodded when they spoke for me, pretended to agree when they told me what my future would be. But inside, something hardened. At 15, I opened my first secret bank account. I lied about why I needed a student ID, forged my father's signature to get a part-time tutoring job, and started saving every rupee I could. When my parents bragged at dinner parties about how obedient I was, I smiled sweetly and added another deposit to my account the next day. At 18, I caught my mother reading letters from my grandmother's lawyer, letters addressed to me. I'd always known my grandmother loved me best. What I didn't know was that she'd left me a significant inheritance in her will. Watched from the hallway as my parents locked the documents in their cabinet. My father muttered, "We'll control this after she marries. No need to tell her yet." That night, I swore I'd never let them touch a single coin of what was mine. By 20, I'd met Mr. Deshpande, a kind-eyed lawyer, who believed daughters deserved more than obedience. He explained trusts, legal loopholes, and how to protect assets from controlling parents. We met in secret for months. I signed papers they didn't know existed, built walls around the inheritance they thought they'd claim. "This will hold," Mira Deshpande assured me. "No one can touch this without your consent. Not even your husband, unless you allow it." I remember walking home that day feeling something I hadn't felt in years. Power da. Back in the present, I slipped on my robe and went downstairs. The Malhotra estate was enormous, marble floors gleaming, walls lined with paintings worth more than my father's entire business. Servants moved quietly through the halls. Everyone smiled at me, the new bride, but under the warmth, I could feel the weight of expectation. This family didn't love me any more than mine did. To them, I was an alliance, a contract, a future daughter-in-law, whose role was to smile and obey. In the dining room, Arjun sat reading the financial pages. He looked up as I entered. "Morning," he said. His tone was polite but distant. "Morning," I replied. We ate in silence for a few minutes before he spoke again. "Your parents called early. They wanted to know how you were settling in." I froze, fork halfway to my mouth. "And what did you tell them?" "That you seemed fine." He folded the newspaper neatly. "But I don't think you are." I gave him a bright, practiced smile. "Why would you think that?" "Because I'm not either," he said simply. That startled me. Arjun looked like the type of man who followed every rule, crisp, controlled, perfect son of a powerful family. But his eyes betrayed something else, something restless. "This isn't your choice either, is it?" I asked. He gave a humorless laugh. "Do you think Malhotra sons get choices?" I studied him. "So you're just going along with it." "For now," he said. "It's easier to let them think they're in control." I sipped my tea slowly. "Funny, I do the opposite." He raised an eyebrow. "What do you mean? Wouldn't you like to know?" I murmured, standing up. His gaze followed me as I left the room, thoughtful, almost amused. I could tell I'd surprised him. Good, let him wonder. Upstairs, I locked my bedroom door and pulled out my phone. I texted Mr. Deshpande a single word. "Ready," he replied instantly. "Call when alone." "Everything is set." I slid the phone back into my robe just as someone knocked on the door. It was one of Arjun's cousins, smiling too brightly. "Bobby, everyone's waiting downstairs. Your mother just arrived to see you." I plastered on my best obedient bride expression. "I'll be right there." But as I followed her down the staircase, my heart pounded. Why would my mother come to the Malhotra house the morning after the wedding? What new strings was she here to pull? When I reached the foyer, she was waiting, graceful as ever, sari perfectly draped, eyes sharp as knives. "Beta," she cooed, loud enough for everyone to hear. "How are you? Did you sleep well? Is Arjun treating you nicely?" "Yes, Ma," I said sweetly. "Everything is perfect." Her smile widened, but her eyes stayed cold. "Good girl. Now come walk with me. Just a few minutes alone." We stepped into the garden, the sun already harsh. She didn't bother with pleasantries once we were out of earshot. "You'll do what we say, Mira," she said flatly. "Don't test us, or what?" I asked lightly. "You'll send me another threatening note." Her nostrils flared just slightly, but I saw it. So she knew I'd read it. "This marriage will protect our family's name," she said, "and it will save your brother's future." "Don't be foolish." "My brother's future," I repeated. "Or your reputation." She grabbed my wrist, nails digging into my skin. "Don't you dare speak to me like that. You owe us everything." Met her gaze calmly. "No, Ma, you owe me." For the first time in my life, I saw uncertainty flash in her eyes, only for a second, but it was there. She released my wrist and stepped back, recovering her composure. "Don't make trouble," she said smoothly, voice honeyed again. "Be a good wife, be silent. That's all we ask." I smiled, but my voice was ice. "That's the one thing I'll never be, silent. That night, after everyone went to bed, I sat on the balcony under the stars and thought about everything that had led me here, every sacrifice I'd been forced to make, every dream they'd crushed, every insult I'd swallowed. I wasn't scared anymore. I was furious, and fury was fueled out. My parents thought they had trapped me. They had no idea I'd been building a way out for years. They had no idea I already had allies, and that soon I might even have one under their own roof. I whispered into the night, "You think I'm your sacrifice? You're wrong. I'm your reckoning." The third morning after the wedding, I woke to find Arjun in the sitting room, dressed perfectly as always, scrolling through his phone while drinking black coffee. He didn't look up as I walked in, still bleary-eyed in my robe. "Morning," he said flatly. "Morning," I replied, pouring myself tea. We'd settled into a strange rhythm already, polite strangers who happened to share a suite of rooms. There was no pretense of intimacy, no forced romance, just civility. Honestly, it was a relief. The last thing I needed right now was a husband who wanted to play newlyweds. But there was something about Arjun I couldn't quite read. He wasn't cold, exactly. He wasn't warm either. He was observing. "You're quiet," I said finally, breaking the silence. "So are you," he countered without looking up. "I've had practice," I murmured. That made him glance up. His eyes were sharp, assessing practice, obeying, practice, pretending, I said smoothly, taking a long sip of tea. The corner of his mouth twitched, almost a smile, but not quite. Interesting answer. Later that day, his mother hosted a small lunch to welcome me officially to the family. More relatives, more polite interrogations disguised as conversation. "Do you cook, Mira Beta?" one aunt asked. "Of course," I lied. I could barely make instant noodles, but I wasn't about to give them an excuse to criticize me. Another relative leaned forward, eyes gleaming with curiosity. "And when do we get grandchildren?" I smiled sweetly. "Why rush? You know what they say, good things take time." They laughed, but I saw Arjun watching me carefully across the table, his expression unreadable. Afterward, as we walked upstairs together, he said, "You lie very convincingly." "Is that a compliment?" I asked. "It's an observation," he said. "You don't seem scared of them. Not my family, not yours. Should I be? Most people are." I glanced at him sideways. "What about you? Are you scared of them?" He gave a dry laugh. "Fear is inefficient. I prefer strategy." I stopped on the staircase, looking at him directly. "So you're strategic about everything?" "Yes," he said without hesitation. "Including you." I raised an eyebrow. "That's charming." "Not meant to be," he said. "I just like to know who I'm dealing with." That evening, I found Arjun on the balcony, smoking something I wouldn't have pegged him for. "Bad habit," I said, stepping outside. "Worse than pretending to be an obedient bride?" he asked without looking at me. I laughed softly. "Touché." He flicked ash into a crystal tray. "So, why did you really agree to this marriage? Don't give me the dutiful daughter answer. I don't buy it." I leaned against the railing, letting the night wind cool my face. "Why did you agree?" I countered. "Because my parents wanted it," he said simply. "They're never satisfied, but this keeps them quiet for now." "That's honest," I admitted. He glanced at me, eyes narrowing slightly. "Your turn." I considered telling him the truth about my parents' debts, about how they thought they'd trade me like a pawn, but I wasn't ready to trust him yet. "Same reason," I lied lightly. "Parents wanted it." Easier to say yes. He didn't look convinced. "You don't strike me as someone who does things because they're easy." "Then maybe you don't know me," I said with a smile. He studied me for a long moment, then looked away. "Maybe I don't, yet." The next day, my brother Rishi showed up at the Malhotra estate, looking nervous. He'd always been the golden child, handsome, charming, adored by my parents. But now, he looked almost afraid. "Mira, can we talk?" he asked, glancing around as if expecting spies in the hallway. I led him into the library, closing the door behind us. "What's wrong?" "Mom and Dad." He hesitated. "They said if you cause any trouble in this marriage, they'll ruin me, they'll cut me off. They said I'll never see a rupee from them again." I clenched my fists. "Unbelievable. They're using you to control me. Just don't do anything crazy." "Okay," he pleaded. "Please. I know you hate them, but I don't hate you, Rishi," I said firmly. "This isn't about you. It's about them." He swallowed hard. "They're scared of something. What is it? What are you planning?" I forced a smile. Nothing you need to worry about. Just trust me. But when I opened the door, Arjun was standing there, arms crossed. How touching, he said mildly. Family drama already. Private conversation, I said coolly. Nothing's private in this house, he replied, eyes flicking from me to Rishi, especially not with my parents listening. That night, during dinner with the Malhotras, I felt the walls closing in. Arjun's parents praised him endlessly, his business acumen, his discipline, his brilliance. Then they turned to me. And you, Mira, his father asked. What are your plans now that you're part of our family? Plans. As if my life belonged to them. I smiled sweetly. I'll support Arjun in any way I can. Of course. Good girl, his mother said approvingly. Across the table, Arjun was watching me again. There was something in his gaze I couldn't place. Not sympathy, not suspicion, maybe a mix of both. After dinner, as I headed upstairs, he caught up with me. You're too good at this, he said quietly. At what? Playing the perfect bride. I tilted my head. Why does that bother you? Because I don't believe it, he said simply. I laughed softly. Maybe I'm just better at acting than you think. He stepped closer, lowering his voice. Or maybe you're hiding something. And if you are, I want to know what it is. Later that night, as I sat at my vanity removing jewelry, Arjun knocked on the door. Can I come in? I hesitated, then nodded. He closed the door behind him. I don't like surprises, he said bluntly. If you're planning something, tell me now. Why? I asked lightly. So you can stop me, so I can decide whether to help you, he replied. That startled me. Help me. He shrugged, leaning against the doorframe. I don't owe my parents anything, and I'm not interested in being their puppet either. You want out of this mess? Maybe I do too. I studied him carefully. How do I know I can trust you? You don't, he said, but you're smart enough to figure out whether you want to try. The next day, we attended a charity gala, together, the first public event as husband and wife. Cameras flashed, relatives gushed, and through it all, Arjun kept that same calm, polished mask. But when no one was looking, he muttered, "This is exhausting." I smiled for the cameras. Welcome to my world. On the drive home, he asked suddenly, "What do you really want, Mira? Out of all this?" "Freedom," I said simply. He looked at me for a long time, then nodded. Good answer. That night, as I returned to our suite, I found another envelope slipped under my door, this time not from my parents. Inside was a single note in Arjun's handwriting. I'm not your enemy, but I'm not your friend yet either. Prove I should be. And tucked behind it, a photograph. A photograph of me, taken secretly 2 weeks ago, meeting Mr. Deshpande, my lawyer. My blood ran cold. The photograph lay on my vanity like a snake, waiting to strike. Me, walking into Mr. Deshpande's office. Me, slipping a file into my bag. Me, unaware that someone had been watching. Arjun had written only 12 words. I'm not your enemy, but I'm not your friend yet either. Prove I should be. I didn't sleep that night. I lay in bed, staring at the ceiling, replaying every interaction we'd had. If Arjun wanted to destroy me, he could have gone straight to my parents. So why warn me? What game was he playing? At breakfast, I slid into the seat across from him, forcing a casual smile. He didn't look up from his phone. Nice handwriting, I said lightly. Glad you liked the note, he replied, finally glancing up. His eyes were calm, too calm. You've been following me? I asked. Not personally, he said, but I have people who notice things, and you decided to show me this. Why? Because you're interesting, he said simply, taking a sip of coffee. Most brides are too busy picking jewelry to hire lawyers in secret. I kept my voice steady. Maybe I was updating my will, he smiled faintly. Try again. I set my cup down, leaning forward. If you're planning to blackmail me, just say it. Blackmail. He looked amused. I'm offering you something else. What a choice, he said. Tell me what you're doing, and maybe I'll help you pull it off. Why would you help me? I demanded. Because I don't like being managed, he said. And our parents think they're running this marriage. I'd like to prove them wrong. I searched his face for any hint of deception, but his expression was infuriatingly neutral. And if I tell you, I pressed, what stops you from running straight to them? Nothing, he admitted icily. That's the risk you take. I stood abruptly. Then I'm not telling you anything. Fair enough, he said, going back to his phone. But if you're smart, you'll realize we're on the same side. I walked out before I could say something I'd regret. That afternoon, My parents called. Their tone was deceptively warm, but I'd known them too long to be fooled. Mira beta, come to dinner tonight, my mother said sweetly. Just family. We miss you already. I almost laughed. Miss me. They missed control, not me. But I agreed refusing would only make them suspicious. When I arrived, their house felt colder than ever. My father greeted me with his politician's smile, my mother with an air kiss that didn't touch my cheek. You're settling in well? My father asked. Of course, I said smoothly. Arjun and I are very compatible. Good, he said, voice dropping slightly. Because if you embarrass us, there will be consequences. I met his gaze evenly. Is that a threat? It's advice, he said. You've been restless lately. Meeting lawyers, asking questions. My stomach tightened. Who told you that? Doesn't matter, he said coldly. What matters is this: you behave, or Rishi pays the price. My breath caught. Leave him out of this. You're our daughter, my mother said softly, almost regretfully. But he's our heir. Do you really want to ruin his future? I drove back to the Malhotra estate with my hands shaking on the wheel. They knew. Somehow they knew I'd seen Mr. Deshpande. Maybe they had people watching me too. Maybe everyone in my life was a spy. When I pulled into the driveway, Arjun was waiting on the front steps, arms crossed. How was dinner? He asked casually. They know, I said flatly. He raised an eyebrow. About your lawyer? About everything, I snapped. They threatened Rishi. They said if I make one wrong move, they'll ruin him. Arjun studied me for a long moment. Then you're running out of time. I followed him inside, furious and shaken. You think this is a game, don't you? No, he said calmly, closing the door behind us. I think it's a war, and you can't fight a war alone. And you're volunteering to be my ally, I asked bitterly. I'm saying our goals align, he said. I don't care about your parents, I don't care about mine either, but I do care about not being a pawn in their power games. So if you're planning something, I want in. I hesitated, weighing every word. And what do you get out of this? Control, he said simply, over my own life. And maybe, if I help you, you won't try to burn me along with them. I almost laughed. So you're helping me out of self-preservation. Exactly, he said without shame. 2 days later, I got a call from Mr. Deshpande. Mira. Someone tried to access your file, he said sharply. A man from your father's office. He claimed you authorized it. My blood ran cold. Did he get anything? No, but they know you're working with me. Be careful. I hung up, heart pounding. When I turned around, Arjun was leaning in the doorway, arms folded. Bad news? He asked. I didn't answer. I didn't have to. Night, I found him in the study. If you betray me, I'll take you down with me, I said evenly. He looked faintly amused. And if I don't betray you, then maybe, I said slowly, you'll find out what I'm really planning. Good, he said, stepping closer. Because I already told my people to start digging into your parents' finances. Let's see what they're hiding. I stared at him, stunned. You already like, I said, he murmured. I don't like being managed. Later that night, as I sat alone in my room, my phone buzzed with a new message, an unknown number. Stop digging, or your brother disappears, and attached, a live photo. Rishi, outside a cafe, completely unaware someone was photographing him. My fingers went numb. This wasn't just a threat anymore. It was real. The live photo of Rishi burned on my phone screen, looping endlessly. Him laughing with a friend outside a cafe. Him oblivious to the fact that someone was hunting him because of me. I locked my door and sat on the edge of my bed, knees shaking. This wasn't an empty warning. They had eyes on him. I dialed immediately. Mira, what's up? He said, cheerfully. Where are you? I demanded. Outside Varen's place. Why? Go home now. My voice cracked. And don't take the same route. Change cabs. Just please, do it. There was a pause. You're scaring me. Good, I snapped. Be scared. Call me when you're home. He hesitated, then sighed. Fine, but you'd better explain later. When the call ended, I buried my face in my hands. If anything happened to him, I'd never forgive myself. The door opened without knocking. What happened? Arjun asked. I held up the phone. He crossed the room in 2 strides, studying the image. They're not subtle, he murmured. That's deliberate. They want you to know they're watching. I have to get him out of the city, I whispered. And tell him what? Arjun asked calmly. That your loving parents hired goons to stalk him. He won't believe you. I don't care. I just need him safe. Running makes you look guilty, he warned. If you vanish him now, they'll double down. We need to play smart. I stared at him, frustrated. Smart doesn't save lives. Action does. Then let me handle it, he said. I can put men on him. Quiet ones. No one will know. Why are you helping me? I demanded. Because if they hurt your brother, you'll burn everything down, he said simply. And I'm standing too close to the fire. The next day, I met Arjun in his study. He had 3 folders on the desk, marked with my father's company logo. Where did you get these? I asked. Where do you think? He said. Your father's real estate deals aren't as clean as he pretends. He's been moving money through shell firms, some in your mother's name. I flipped through the files, my anger rising. Fake land sales, inflated construction costs, bribes disguised as consulting fees. This is enough to ruin them, I whispered. Not yet, Arjun said. They're careful. We need a direct link, proof they personally signed off. I hesitated. There's one thing. My father keeps a black leather ledger, old-fashioned, handwritten. He doesn't trust computers. We're in his study at home. Locked drawer. Then we'll get it, Arjun said icily, as if planning to pick up groceries. You make it sound simple, I muttered. It is, if you're willing to take risks, he said, smiling faintly. That evening, I called my cousin Nina, the only person in my family I'd ever trusted. She'd always been kind to me, sneaking sweets into my room when I was grounded, listening when no one else would. Nina, I need help, I said softly. It's about Papa and Mama. They're doing something terrible. There was a long pause. Mira, you shouldn't be talking like this, she said nervously. You know they're only trying to protect you. No, I said firmly. They're protecting themselves. They threatened Rishi. They're watching him. Another silence. Too long. Then a faint click. I froze. Nina, are you recording this? Her voice shook. I didn't have a choice. They made me. I'm sorry. The line went dead. My heart dropped into my stomach. If she handed that recording to my parents, they'd know I was planning something. 10 minutes later, my phone rang. My father, Beta. His voice was dangerously calm. We just heard the most interesting story from your cousin, about you, accusing us of, what was it, terrible things. I clenched my teeth. Let Rishi go. Leave him alone, or what? He said softly. You'll ruin our reputation. Child, you're not strong enough. Not yet. You're monsters, I whispered. No, he said, almost amused. We're survivors, and we'll do whatever it takes to stay on top, even if it means sacrificing you. He hung up before I could answer. I paced my room until my legs ached. I needed to move quickly, get that ledger, get proof, strike before they could strike me, but I also needed to keep Rishi alive. I called Arjun. I'm in, I said without preamble. Whatever you're planning, I'm in. But first, promise me something. What? Promise me you'll keep him safe, no matter what. I already put men on him, Arjun said. Your brother won't even know they're there. I sank onto the bed, trembling with relief. Thank you. Don't thank me yet, he said. Because once we do this, there's no going back. We met at midnight in the library, spreading maps of my parents' house across the table. Arjun had memorized the guards' schedules. I still remembered the old servant passages from when I was a child sneaking out to read after lights out, the ledgers in his study. Second floor, I whispered. Locked drawer, left side, keys on his keyring, but he sometimes leaves it in the drawer of his bedside table. Good, Arjun said. We'll create a distraction, slip in, and get it. No one will suspect you'd break into your own parents' house. My laugh was bitter. You don't know them. They suspect me of everything. All the more reason to move fast, he said. We do this tomorrow night. As I crept back to my room, my phone buzzed again. Another unknown number. Another image. This time, it was Rishi, asleep in his own bedroom, taken through the window. Tonight, my blood turned to ice. They weren't just watching him in public anymore. They were inside his world, inside ours. If they could reach him in his own home, what would stop them from striking tomorrow? I barely slept. Every sound outside my window made me imagine Rishi being dragged off by shadowy hands. When dawn broke, I was already dressed, my bag packed, my nerves shredded to threads. By evening, I had replayed our plan 100 times, each time with new ways it could go wrong. Arjun arrived after midnight, dressed all in black, his hair pulled back neatly, He looked disturbingly at ease. Ready? He asked, as if we were going to a party. No, I said honestly. But we're doing it anyway. We parked 2 streets away from my parents' mansion. Even in the dead of night, the compound lights glowed like a fortress. They upgraded security, I muttered, noting 2 new guards at the gate. Doesn't matter, Arjun said, motioning for me to follow. We're not using the gate. We slipped into a narrow alley and scaled the sidewall using a tree whose branches hung just close enough. My dress snagged. I cursed under my breath. Not exactly your wedding outfit, Arjun whispered with a grin. Focus, I hissed. We dropped into the garden, crouching low among the manicured hedges. A faint breeze carried the smell of night jasmine, sickly sweet, almost mocking. That we found the old servant's entrance I'd used as a child to sneak into the kitchen for stolen gulab jamans. The door was still loose on its hinge. Arjun slid. It opened soundlessly, and we crept into the darkened hallway. The air inside was colder than I remembered. The marble floors reflected our shadows back at us. Studies on the 2nd floor. I whispered. We moved like ghosts, ducking under security cameras, whose angles I knew by heart. At the base of the staircase, Arjun froze, holding out an arm to stop me. Footsteps. A guard was doing rounds inside the house now. That was new. We pressed ourselves into a niche until he passed, humming to himself. I could feel my heartbeat in my throat. We reached my father's study without further incident. The door was locked, but Arjun produced a set of slim tools from his pocket. You've done this before, I murmured. Don't ask, he muttered, working the lock. Within seconds, the door clicked open. I slipped inside, shutting it quietly. The familiar smell of my father's cigars hit me harsh, acrid. The massive desk loomed like an altar. I pulled open the left drawer. Locked, as expected. But when I tugged on the right drawer, empty. My heart sank. Where's the key? Arjun asked. His bedside table, I whispered. Great, he said. I'll get it. You stay here. Absolutely not, I hissed. I know the layout better than you. He glared at me, but we didn't have time to argue. We slipped back into the hallway and padded to my parents' bedroom. I eased the door open and froze. The bed was empty. My parents weren't home. That should have been a relief. It wasn't. The sheets were still warm. They left in a hurry. I whispered. Grab the key and go, Arjun urged. I went to the nightstand, opened the drawer, and there it was, a small brass key. But next to it was something else. My old diary. I hadn't seen it in years. Pages dog-eared, my teenage handwriting glaring up at me. My secrets, every angry word I'd written about my parents, laid bare. They've been reading this, I said. Horrified, Arjun's expression darkened. We're running out of time. I snatched the key and we bolted back to the study. I jammed it into the left drawer and yanked. The black leather ledger sat there, pristine, smelling of ink and power. Got it, I whispered, tucking it under my arm. That's when the lights came on. Going somewhere, Beta. My father's voice filled the room. I spun around. He was standing in the doorway with my mother at his side. Both of them dressed, alert, furious. Behind them were 2 men I didn't recognize, not regular guards. Put it back, my mother said coldly. Now, Arjun stepped forward. Stay back. My father's eyes narrowed. Ah, the groom's family is already meddling. How predictable. This marriage was your idea, I shot back. What, you thought I'd walk in blind? My father's lips curved into a thin smile. You have no idea how blind you really are. He motioned to the men. They stepped inside, blocking the only exit. Arjun glanced at me. You trust me, he whispered. Do I have a choice? I muttered. In one swift motion, he hurled the glass paperweight at the window. The alarm shrieked. The guards outside would come running, but that was better than being cornered in silence. While my parents shouted, we dove through the shattered window onto the balcony and scrambled down the trellis, ripping our hands on the thorns. We hit the ground running. The men were right behind us. Go left, I shouted. There's an old gate. Too late. A 3rd man stepped out of the shadows, blocking our path. Arjun barreled into him full force, sending him sprawling. I sprinted through the garden, clutching the ledger, adrenaline drowning out fear. We scaled the wall again, tearing my dress on the branches, and hit the alley pavement just as headlights swept toward us. For one horrifying second, I thought it was my father's car. But it was Arjun's driver, right on time. We dove into the back seat, gasping for breath. Drive, Arjun ordered. Fast. As the car sped away, I looked back once and saw my father standing in the driveway, calm, almost smiling, not angry. That scared me more than anything. We holed up in a safe house. Arjun owned a nondescript apartment above a shuttered clinic. I set the ledger on the table and opened it. Page after page of transactions. Handwritten notes, names I recognized, politicians, contractors, middlemen, and there scrawled in my mother's neat handwriting were initials that matched offshore accounts. This is enough to bury them, Arjun said quietly. I closed the book. Not yet. If we use this now, they'll retaliate. I need to time this perfectly. He looked at me curiously. What exactly is your plan, Mira? I met his gaze. Let's just say I'm not planning to stay married to you very long. His eyebrows rose. Interesting. Care to elaborate? Not yet, I said, a hint of a smile on my lips. You'll see at the wedding. Before he could press me, my phone buzzed again. Another message. This time, no image, just for chilling words. Too late for Rishi. The text wouldn't stop flashing in my mind. Too late for Rishi. It felt like someone had poured ice water down my spine. I called his number again, no answer. I called his roommate, voicemail. My parents hadn't mentioned him at the confrontation. Was that deliberate? Were they keeping me guessing? Calm down, Arjun said, pacing the small apartment. They're trying to scare you. What if it's not just fear? I shot back. What if they've actually hurt him then? We'll find out, he said. I have people who can track him. Arjun made 2 calls, rapid and efficient, using names I didn't recognize. I kept pacing, clutching my phone like a lifeline. After 20 minutes, one of his contacts called back. Rishi's phone last pinged near the airport 2 hours ago, Arjun said, covering the receiver. Airport, I echoed. They sent him away. Arjun nodded as he listened. No official tickets under his name, but a private hangar saw a car matching your father's plate. My stomach turned. So they're hiding him, somewhere far. They won't kill him, Arjun said carefully, but his eyes betrayed uncertainty. He's leverage, Mira. That's all. I sank onto the couch, my mind spiraling. Memories of shielding Rishi as a child, when my father raised his voice, when my mother called him weak. I'd always been the one to stand in front, taking the brunt. They'll break him, I whispered. They can't if we move fast, Arjun replied. But first, you have to decide. Are you willing to push this all the way? I stared at the black ledger lying on the table. Inside were enough secrets to destroy my family, but also enough to blow up the life I'd been told to protect at all costs. I've already decided, I said. The wedding is still happening, but it won't end the way they think. The next morning, we met secretly with Mr. Deshmukh, an elderly lawyer who'd known my grandfather. I trusted him more than anyone else in the family circle. I slid the ledger across his desk. I need to ensure everything here is legally airtight. I need to control what happens next. Deshmukh adjusted his glasses, scanning the pages. His eyes widened. These accounts, these signatures. Do you know what this means, Mira? Yes, I said evenly. It means my parents have been siphoning money through shell companies for years, but I don't want to expose them just yet. I want to own them first. He frowned. How? I want to transfer certain properties into my name, quietly, before the wedding, and I want an escape clause written into the marriage contract. Deshmukh tapped his pen, intrigued. You're planning to turn your arranged marriage into leverage against your own parents. I'm planning, I corrected, to stop being their sacrifice. That night, lying awake on the hard safe house mattress, I let myself think the unthinkable. What if I'm wrong? What if they really hurt him to punish me? Arjun sat at the table, working his phone. You should sleep, he murmured. I can't, I whispered. If they've done something to Rishi, it's my fault. No, Arjun said firmly. It's theirs. They've used you both as pawns your whole life, but you're about to end that. I looked at him. Why are you helping me? This is more than business. He hesitated. Because I know what it's like to have a family try to break you, and because you're braver than you think. His words should have comforted me. Instead, they made me wonder how much of his own story I didn't know. Over the next few days, I started playing my part perfectly. I met my parents for pre-wedding rituals, smiled when they expected me to, kept my voice soft and obedient, but in small ways, I let them see glimmers of defiance. When my mother adjusted my bangles, I said, you must be relieved. Once I'm gone, all your other plans will stay intact. She stiffened. What do you mean by that? Nothing, I said sweetly. just thinking about how sacrifices are remembered. When my father lectured me on duty, I replied, "Don't worry, I've learned everything from you about keeping secrets." His eyes narrowed, searching my face for cracks. Meanwhile, I met Arjun's parents again. They were polite but distant, clearly confused by my sudden composure. "Are you happy about this marriage, Mira?" his mother asked delicately. "I'm prepared for it," I said, "but you should know, wedding day may bring some surprises." Her eyes widened. "What kind of surprises?" "The kind that change everything," I murmured. Arjun shot me a warning look, but I only smiled. If word leaked back to my parents that I was planning something, so much the better. Let them squirm. 3 days before the wedding, Arjun's contacts finally sent a blurry photo. Rishi sitting in a small room, guarded but unharmed, somewhere that looked like a rural guest house. He was alive, for now. The message attached read, "Condition for his release. Complete the wedding with no drama. They know you're planning something," Arjun said grimly. "Good," I replied. "Let them keep guessing. They think my drama ends at the mandap. They have no idea that's where it begins." Deshmukh worked fast. By the night before the wedding, all the documents were ready. A legal transfer of key family assets into my name, triggered automatically if I signed a specific clause during the wedding registration. "It's risky," Deshmukh warned. "If they catch on, they'll try to stop the signing." "They won't," I said, "because they'll be too busy watching me for something else." Arjun looked at me with something between admiration and fear. "What exactly are you planning to say at that wedding, Mira?" I closed the ledger and smiled faintly. "Something my parents will never forget." Late that night, as I packed the red wedding sari my mother had chosen, every fold stiff with family expectations, my phone buzzed one last time. This time it wasn't just a text. It was a live video feed. Rishi, tied to a chair, looking straight into the camera, eyes wide with terror, and my father's voice in the background, cold and calm. "Remember, Beta, no scenes tomorrow, or you won't see your brother again." The wedding morning smelled of roses and kerosene. The roses were everywhere, garlands on the chairs, petals strewn on the aisle. The kerosene was only in my imagination, but I could almost taste the fumes, because this whole event was fuel waiting for a spark. I looked at myself in the mirror of the bridal suite, my mother's chosen sari, heavy crimson silk draped over me like armor. Gold jewelry weighed down my neck and ears. I didn't look like myself. I looked like their idea of me. But deep inside, where no one could see, I was coiled steel. The phone on the dresser pinged. A new message. "No scenes today, or your brother dies." I closed my eyes. Rishi's terrified face from last night burned in my mind. My father didn't bluff. Not about things like this. But he underestimated me. He always had. The venue was glittering with guests. The priest sat at the mandap, preparing the sacred fire. Arjun was already there, dressed as the perfect groom, his expression carefully neutral. He met my eyes as I entered. Just for a second, his gaze said, "Are you sure about this?" I nodded almost imperceptibly. My parents greeted me at the entrance. My father's hand gripped mine hard enough to hurt. My mother leaned close, lips barely moving. "You're our sacrifice, Beta. Make it count." There it was, the same whisper from the engagement, now sharpened into a threat. But I didn't flinch. I smiled sweetly and said, "Don't worry, everyone will remember this day." The ceremony began. The priest chanted Sanskrit verses as Arjun and I exchanged flowers. Guests murmured blessings, cameras flashed. I kept my face serene, my voice obedient, every motion smooth and practiced. But under the surface, every moment was calculated. Deshmukh's papers were in my clutch, folded among the ritual offerings. The clerk who would register the marriage had already been briefed, quietly bribed. He believed we were adding a simple inheritance clause. He didn't know it was a trap for my parents. During the vows, I repeated every word clearly. No tremor, no hesitation. My parents watched me like hawks, looking for any sign of rebellion. They thought rebellion would be loud. They didn't know it could be silent, hidden in ink. After the fire ceremony, we moved to the side table for the official registration. This was the moment that seemed harmless to everyone else, just paperwork after the rituals. But I had orchestrated it perfectly. Deshmukh was there as a witness. He slid the documents smoothly into the stack. My father glanced at them, distracted by relatives swarming around, and signed where indicated. My mother signed next, barely looking. Arjun signed our agreed part of the ruse. And finally, I signed, sealing it. With those strokes of ink, multiple key family assets, including the shares in the export company my father cherished, shifted legally into my name. If they tried to annul the marriage or cut me off, they'd find themselves fighting their own signatures in court. But that was only part of the plan. The real explosion was still to come. The priest called the families forward for blessings. My father placed his hand on my head. "Good girl," he muttered, thinking he had one. I took the microphone meant for thanking the guests. My heart pounded, but my voice was calm. "Before we close this ceremony, I want to speak." My mother stiffened. "Mira," she hissed. I ignored her. "I want to thank everyone here, and I want to share the truth of what this day means." The hall went quiet, cameras swiveled, my parents froze. "For years," I said clearly, "I believed my duty was to obey, to let my family decide my future, to be, as my parents called me this morning, their sacrifice." A ripple went through the crowd. My mother's face went pale. My father took a step toward me. "Enough," he growled under his breath. I stepped back, holding the mic higher. "But today is not a sacrifice. Today is justice. I know what you've done. The secret accounts, the shell companies, the threats against Rishi." Gasps erupted. "Yes," I said to the audience, "my brother is being held somewhere right now to make sure I stayed quiet." But I didn't stay quiet. Security guards from the venue hesitated, unsure whether to intervene. Arjun moved to my side, shielding me. I reached into my clutch and held up the black ledger. "These are the records, signed by my parents, proof of everything they thought they could hide. And just minutes ago, they signed over control of those assets to me." My father lunged, but Arjun caught his arm. Deshmukh stepped forward, cool as ice. "All legal," he announced to the stunned guests. "Every signature, authenticated, irrevocable." The hall exploded into shouting. My uncles demanded explanations. My mother tried to grab the mic, tears streaking her makeup. "Mira, what are you doing? You're ruining us." "No," I said, my voice cutting through the noise. "You ruined yourselves. You taught me to obey, but you also taught me how power works. And now you'll learn what happens when the daughter you tried to break decides to break free instead." I turned to the cameras, making sure every word was recorded. "If anything happens to my brother, the police and the press will get everything. I've already sent copies to people outside this hall." My father's face twisted with rage, but he knew I wasn't bluffing. The ledger wasn't my only weapon. I'd emailed every page to multiple journalists that morning. Within an hour, the venue emptied in chaos. Guests fled rather than be associated with scandal. My parents tried to retreat to their car, only to be blocked by relatives demanding answers. Meanwhile, Arjun and I slipped out with Desh. 10 minutes later, his contacts confirmed, Rishi had been dropped off, unharmed, at a nearby hotel. My father's last bargaining chip had vanished. When I saw my brother, I nearly collapsed with relief. He hugged me so tight I could barely breathe. "I thought they'd kill me," he whispered. "They can't touch us now," I said. "Not anymore." 2 days later, they came to see me. Not to apologize, they'd never do that, but to threaten, to beg, to bargain. "You humiliated us," my mother spat. "You tried to destroy us first," I replied. My father slammed his fist on the table. "Return the company shares. Undo this madness." I met his gaze, steady. "No, you don't control me anymore, and you'll never touch Rishi again." For the first time in my life, I saw something new in his eyes. Not anger, not disappointment, fear. As for Arjun, he stood by me through everything, though our marriage had been born in deceit. We sat together on the terrace that night, the city lights glittering below. "So," he said softly, "are we actually married?" "Legally, yes," I said. "And do you want to be?" I thought about it, about his quiet loyalty, his willingness to risk himself for me, even though this had started as a deal. "I want to choose," I said. "Not be chosen for," he smiled faintly. "Then choose." I looked at him. "I choose me. For now, if you're still here later, we'll see." People whispered for weeks about what happened at my wedding. Some called me ungrateful. Some called me brave. My parents tried to spin the story, but the documents spoke louder than their lies. I walked away with my freedom, my brother safe, and my family's empire no longer in their control. The sacrifice they wanted me to be, I burned it to ashdot, and, as I watched the city sunrise from my own apartment, not theirs, not anyone's, I whispered to myself, I was never your sacrifice. I was your reckoning.